So, okay, so intention setting, and grab notebook and pen. We're doing this on the video. This first part, we're going to go through just some different definitions, and there's a few different approaches to doing intention setting work. And I'm going to kind of give you a fused, mixed approach, I guess, of what they all are. And Adele is going to do her jumping it in, especially from her Satchitananda training. I'm sure she can give a far more in-depth explanation than my very brief description that I've put in the notes. So from a yoga perspective, it's often referred to as Sankalpa. And the goal of a Sankalpa, I guess, in a way, in terms of its definition, is how to live a meaningful life. So when we're using our Sankalpa, it's about how we can bring what comes from our heart into the way that we live every day, and hopefully that contributes to a bigger purpose of something that's happening throughout our life. And it's amazing how many of us can manage to muddle through life without really connecting into that bigger sense, or that we can connect in, but sometimes it comes from some degree of the ego. So whether it comes from a fear or some kind of greedy desire that's kind of hidden in another way, or, you know, like inner child traumas that can propel us into a certain kind of behavior as an adult that we think is that inner heartfelt desire, but actually it's just our inner child trying to heal. So just trying to be aware that sometimes we can steer ourselves through a variety of kind of desires that maybe aren't always really what connects to our soul's dharma. And it is that sense of how we connect into what our heart really wants us to live fully in this lifetime. And it's so that you flourish abundantly in every way that you possibly can throughout your life. So, you know, I remember a great Sex and the City quote where she says that you don't get to have, I've got to go Sarah Jessica Parker moment, right? You know, you never get to have the man, the money, and the money and the home all in one go. There's always one that has to go out the window. Like you only ever get two, not three. And I always used to think like, oh God, that's so true. You never get everything. Like it's always suffering somewhere. And actually, if you're living that heartfelt mission, then you'll feel abundant in all of those areas and you won't suffer. Sex and the City, like there's a lack feeling. Because even if you're not necessarily, you know, like making tons of money like some people, you might still feel abundant in the amount of things that you've got in your life, and that you don't need or want for things. Like you still have plenty of money for what you want, say, in her example. So it's that sense of always feeling abundant, rather than, you know, how we maybe sometimes view it in the Western world. So it's, I think, taking that time to really connect into what feels abundant and feels heartfelt, as opposed to always looking at externally what validates us as being abundant or what validates a heartfelt feeling, because what's in someone's heart is not in someone else's. And taking that quiet time, which obviously we've all been getting apparently lots more time for quiet time. I actually haven't had more quiet time. I feel like it's been really hectic, but I know there's plenty of people who through COVID have had a very nice quiet time to connect into that. And helping that that connection between your subconscious and your unconscious, and bringing that in to a slightly more conscious awareness. And in Satchitananda, and I might let Adele pop in with some of the Satchitananda side of things if you want, because I know she's definitely done a more in-depth Satchitananda training than I got to do, which is that sense of uniting the different aspects of the mind so that they're all working together into your conscious actions of how you live. So really bringing through in a meditation what are your unconscious desires, and that's desires from your heart that you can then choose to put into action in your daily living. So you're using meditation as part of that path to create focused action and intention in how you live your day and how you interact with people. Does that sound fair, Adele?
Very beautifully, succinctly put. I guess essentially they they put the mind into different compartments. So the mind is not just what's up in here, our brain. That's only one part of it. There's also sort of the mind that's part of the heart, and we need to let that part of us rule over this part, the bit that's sort of the self, the ego, in order to access what the deeper intentions of our lives are. And when this is in control, the master, and not this, then that's when we can live our lives in that full way. But in order to do that, in our current, especially in our current lifestyles, that it's way too fast and way too busy, we can't access this unless we do deep meditation, which is why when you're doing a yoga nidra, they say, say your sankalpa, but if you don't have one, just let it arise naturally. Let it just come into your subconscious, or your consciousness through the subconscious, through the heart, and wait for it to happen. So you're not trying to guess what it is, or you're not trying to intellectualize what it is. You can fill it in if you don't have, like in the meantime, you can just say, I want to be this. But the true one, the true sankalpa, has to come from deep connection with the heart space, the heart center. And that is why partly also you repeat it at the end. Partly it's you're more able to access the subconscious at the end of yoga nidra or at the end of a meditation. But it's also a good time for that the images or the sensation, the feeling to arise during that time when you go, oh, light bulb moment, that's what it is. That's the truth that I want to follow.
And I don't know about you, Adele, but I find that Satchitananda approach for me has been one of the more healing approaches, because it allows you to be fluid and in the moment with intention. So you can allow intention to be changing as, you know, life is changing. So it can kind of reflect your current like mid-short term needs as well as your long term. And you know, I know in the early days of my head injury, I'd say for like 3 years, I had the same sankalpa that always came up because that's what I needed. And then it started changing much more rapidly because I was capable of moving through that sankalpa and needing the next stage and needing the next stage. So it's kind of in the Rod Stryker method of Journey into Self, he talks about it more that you want to know what your life's dharma is. And then you use your shorter sankalpas in your yoga nidra practice to like break down into your midterm goals and your short-term goals. And that's a much more modern psychology way of approaching it, I find, and a little bit still too much rational mind, but it helps for people who maybe aren't so trusting of allowing that intuitive sense, which, I mean, I know you are very good with that intuition, Raj, so I think the Satchitananda probably resonates quite well with you. But for a lot of people, they need that extra bit of the psychology approach. And that Rod Stryker approach is a really nice one for breaking down like big life goal, what's my short term, like next year or whatever, and then what's my like, you know, next 3 months. And the other one that's been kind of quite well researched is Richard Miller's I Rest Yoga Nidras, which he softens it from Satchitananda because of the PTSD and post-veteran patients that he developed I Rest with, and he calls it the heartfelt mission, which is a much, again, it's that softer but still quite psychology friendly approach. And he's allowing, still from that Satchitananda approach of connecting into the heart and what resonates as a heartfelt feeling. As opposed to feeling need to attach it to anything bigger than that. So it's much more short term, which helps people who are going through trauma. And that is also a really beautiful way of approaching it. And it also gives a bit of space for allowing your intention to arise rather than necessarily having to predetermine it. But he also does sometimes spend a bit of time around training people into how do you connect into your heartfelt mission. And doing that again through body sense work, a lot of it. So a lot of what he does is that sensing into the body and how it physically feels in order to help you come into what physically feels like a good feeling, which is that heartfelt sense. So a lot of time spent on sense feeling what feels good can help you sense into what your heart feels is good. So again, taking us away from the mind and just bringing us back down into that heart space. And then the last one that I thought was worth mentioning is the law of attraction approach, because law of attraction doesn't necessarily have an angle of heartfelt centeredness. Law of attraction is, you can be as greedy as you want and you can just still attract it, right? It's very neutral energy, being a universal law. And obviously you can attract whatever you want. So it really then comes down to clear, neutral intention. So we're coming away from heartfelt intention and just being like, also remember, intention setting is as simple as you just decide to focus your energy on something and it will be attracted to you. So you can subconsciously be creating intentions and drawing stuff to you and circumstances to you that you're like, why did I want this in my life? And it's because subconsciously you've been putting a lot of energy into worrying about something. And so you're going to draw that worry into your life. And I think it's important to make a note when we're talking about intention setting about the energy that we're putting into our intentions, as to if that is an energy that we want to put in and if that is actually wording that we want to put in, and are we aware of those intentions sometimes, because that is what you're going to manifest at the end of the day, is where you put that focus and where you put those emotions into,
which is largely why intentions work, because we're consciously saying something and trying to believe it and feeling that feeling of it, and that is basically reprogramming the brain. So it's that wire together, fire together, wire together, that saying, where if you go over the same pathway in your mind, in your brain, like the neurons are firing to generate a particular thought or feeling, that is what will strengthen. So you can either do it positively or negatively, and if you choose to do it positively, you will be able to manifest that whatever that intention is in your life. And so whether we do that from the intellect and just go, I want to be happy, or whatever it is, it still works, because we're still generating that we're telling the subconscious goes to work on whatever it is that our conscious mind tells it to do. So if we consciously say, I am happy, then we will become happy over time with repetition, which is why it's important to do it daily. But at the same time, it can work in the opposite, which is what Nid's saying, that you can manifest, I am unhappy, if that's what you feel. If that's what you believe, that's what you will manifest. So you have to, so there's sort of, I feel like there's two levels. There's the conscious level of deliberately planting the seed of positive, whatever outcome you want. But there's also that deeper, the sankalpa of the Satyananda tradition, which is the much more deeper, the mission, the dharma, the heartfelt life.
Because it does feel like the law of attraction stuff feels more grounded in just the material in a way. Maybe that's because of the way that's been presented, but as well as emotional, it feels like, okay, for example, if you want to buy a house, focus on what it is you want it to look like, or where you want it to be, and those things feel very material. But the dharma based stuff, the kind of heart mission type stuff, it feels much longer term and much harder to figure out, because also when you're at different stages in your life, like you were saying, Nid, you've got different immediate sort of transformations or shifts or whatever that you might be going through. And then what I find really difficult, in many ways, I've been really good at the law of attraction type stuff, and I've always just thought, oh, this is what I want to make happen for myself, or how I want to be, and not boom, but give it a few years, I managed to make it happen. But I guess the interesting thing is, moving aside from all of this sort of lifestyle material, job, that kind of thing, what we're here for and how we want to kind of make our life's purpose have meaning for the sort of entirety of our existence on the planet is just such a huge kind of thing that I can't comprehend how you could ever figure that out, because you change so much. And that's the thing I've been actually thinking about a lot this last couple of months, just probably since I turned 40, but that's a couple of years. But it's one of those things which feels like a real life shift, because up until now, I've kind of mastered the manifesting stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know, I get it, how it works, done it a million times. But what about the deeper stuff? Like, now I've got the house, now I've got the whatever, now I've got the dog. what now? You know, it's kind of like, well, I don't know what it's all about. You know, like what's the deeper stuff?
So
and
that's
like getting to that.
Yeah, and I think and it's interesting you say that, because I think I remember the point where I realized I'd been doing the same thing before my head injury. I was like, God, I was manifesting so much stuff, but I always thought that everything I manifested, a bit like the Sex and the City example, like I always thought there was a price to pay. So if I got something, I'd always lose something in return for gaining. And so that always happened to me. Like every time I'd get what I'd want, but there would be a cost to it. And so after my head injury, I was like, that's stupid. And, you know, why do I always have to think I have to pay a price? Like, that's just an odd way of like, you know, but like that was my approach of how I use law of attraction. And then when I started doing more of the Sankalpa work, what I found was that it connects actually quite nicely with law of attraction, in the sense of, you know, what you're using with Sankalpa is law of attraction. Right. But it's that difference of using heart center rather than using mind center, and using law of attraction as a way of taking the little steps towards that bigger mission. And law of attraction can be big stuff too. It doesn't just have to be small stuff, but it's also, the two work together because it's the same universal law that you're using. It's just that law of attraction is sold in a very modern self-help way that I think is in some ways really quite unattractive nowadays. And I know that a lot of my private clients, when I've been doing this stuff with them, they have that reaction kind of a bit like you, where it's that slight kind of feeling of like, well, I really like the yoga stuff, but when you mention law of attraction, it feels icky. And I'm like, that's just because it's been sold badly. Our intention work in our Sankalpa is law of attraction. That's what it is. It's the same, like Adele's saying, it's the same neural pathways that we're creating. Right. The difference is that what we're trying to do with the Sankalpa is come into that heartfelt center, so that when we decide what we want to attract, whether it's big life mission or small things, we're trying to set those small things that we attract from that heart space, so that they're small things that contribute to a life of purpose. And one of the many schools that I decided to study, they talk about the art of mastery. And the art of mastery is how you could live that small, apparently mundane life, but where everything has that sense of purpose and ritual and presence within it. And that you are a master if you know how to live your life like you feel like you're doing that with purpose every day in every action that you do. And that way, if you're living in that mastered way in all of our small actions, then you are going to be drawing what is your life's dharma. Because it's coming from that heartfelt place. And then you don't, in a way, have to worry about what is my big vision? What am I here to do? What am I here to create? You know, some people, they have like that, like picture in their head, but not everyone does. And sometimes some of us have to navigate and kind of swim a little bit. But if you can master trying to find that heart space and choose small things from that, then that should be taking you on that route of that Sankalpa. If that makes sense. And then maybe you start to find a closer way to knowing what that bigger picture is as well. I mean, so one of the practices, and this does come more from the Rod Stryker approach, if you're trying to have a mental construct of what your heartfelt purpose is, and I can do this as an exercise, but I can also give you the questions and you can go away and do it in your own time. So you've got your own space. So like do a little meditation, and then you would go through the following 4 questions. So the first one is, if you were a seed, what word would describe your essence? The next one is, what are your core values? And that can take a bit of time. It shouldn't be more than 3 to 5. And I can send, in fact, I'll put it in the notes in the workshop post after this as well, that Brené Brown has a really nice list of values that you can use to kind of work through. The key with the values is to take some time to put them in place in your daily life. So what you do is you pick your values and then you try and see how they show up in your choices of how you interact with people, how you you know, are viewing yourself, how you're choosing to do your work, whatever. But see, are those values resonating in all of your life, or are you not stepping up to your values? Because you should always, if it's part of your heartfelt mission, your values will always be in everything that you do, and you will be holding them in balance, right? Another more psychological approach that Rod Stryker proposes is what themes recur in your life. So do you see specific lessons and occurrences that reoccur? And maybe they start to show you something about that heartfelt mission of maybe what you're here to share and deliver. Because as one of my friends says, your mess is your message. You know, it's only from our kind of the shadow work of ourselves that we transform it into a gift. And when it becomes a gift once we can transmute it into its essence, and that is when it really is the gift to share. And that's what those themes often can be in our life, are what we're really here to share with. And for some people, this works as a good question as to what drives you to wake each day. Yeah, that doesn't work if you're really depressed, just as a side note. That can work for some people as well. So those are the 4 questions that can be good to kind of use to help you mentally tap into that sense of heartfelt life mission. So the next thing,
those questions were from
so I did some training with a Rod Stryker teacher. His work is called, his book is Journey into Self, is the book that he wrote, and this comes from his big heart, big mind. He's a beautiful teacher, really beautiful techer. It's a different lineage of Yoga Nidra that was developed, that he took that from and modernized it, a bit like I-Rest was taken from Satchidananda and modernized. So the next part of our intentions is thinking about the words that we use, because words have a lot of meaning to most of us, and it's not just the word itself but also the energy that resonates as we say it. So, and I'm sure you're very aware of how you've used this with your own kind of use of attraction work, but when I don't know about you, Adele, but often I find that if I use the Satchidananda to let a Sankalpa arise, the words aren't necessarily words that I would choose for myself consciously to say. And that shifts the energy quite significantly in setting intentions. Whereas often when I set an intention from a law of attraction basis, there's often a feeling of the lack energy that can be in there, of like, I want to get to. And when we have that gap from lack to where we want to get to, that stops that ability for that intention obviously to be manifested. And so really trying to allow the words to arise and make sure that when they do, that they resonate with the energy that's the highest vibration, which is going to be gratitude and compassion, being the 2 highest vibrations. So really needs to like make your heart sing when you say the words. And then that sense of being really grateful for the fact that it exists, you know, and it's there for you at that point that you're ready to receive. But also allow yourself time, if you're noticing that you're caught in a gap of lack, to let that contrast of where you're at and where you want to get to inform your choice of wording. Because I think it's important to recognize that those negative places are what propel us to have desires and to know what we want and to narrow and focus. And it's through that focus with our words that we can invest the energy to then really move forward into manifesting our heartfelt desires. You look like you have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's that sense of being able to say it, and you know, it's funny, like a lot of the teaching is you've got to really say it with like so much joy and gratitude, But there's also allowing yourself to be neutral sometimes. So sometimes it can be good if you're in a real place of lack and contrast and you're really struggling to get there. Just to get to neutral is a really important step. And I think that I've definitely noticed over doing this work with people that actually getting them to neutral is more work than once they get to neutral. It's easy then to move on to gratitude and move towards the compassion. But actually, if you're in such a place of lack, getting to neutral is the hardest point. And I do a game. I had one client who was very cute, who reacted so well to this, and she's adamant I need to turn it into a game because it's the coconut game. So it's that basically when you're in so much lack and you're trying to get to your intention and you just can't get the words, like every word is icky, right? Because you're just like, I'm just not there, like, it's not fair, right? And you know, you're just in that mode. And the game is that you it's a really silly game, right? So imagine you're about 4, because it will work if you're a kid.
Love it.
Is that you're a coconut. Okay, so imagine you're a coconut, and then you as a coconut are going to resolve whatever it is your issue. So I had a friend of mine who was really annoyed because his truck wasn't working properly and he couldn't get it to take his stuff to where he was trying to work. And so I was like, so how's the coconut going to solve your problem? You need to visualize and explain to me the coconut solving your problem. So he's like, okay, well, I'm going to make a truck with coconuts. And I was like, okay, what coconuts are you using? And so then you start going down this road of like the coconut solving and how the coconuts become like whatever it is the issue. And it's amazing how by doing that, it opens up the creativity in the mind. It releases all that negative energy, and it kind of, it lifts you to the point where they can be neutral, if not in a slightly more positive frame of mind, in order to move towards what are the right words for the intention that you need in order to move into kind of setting the right kind of wording and energy for what it is you're trying to set forth. So even if it's not the coconuts, I don't feel like either of you have turned up with a problem today that needs a coconut.
Well, I love
but imagine
the
you're a
idea.
coconut. Just imagine a coconut, turn the coconut into whatever you want to do. And it doesn't have to be a coconut. I just found that coconuts are kind of like cute and a bit random in shape. And it kind of works, right? Because coconuts are quite versatile in terms of a thing that you can imagine them as quite a lot of products. That's why it works. And it's important when we get ourselves stuck, though, to have that kind of thing. And I know that a lot of my training when I was doing my law of attraction training was around kind of, you know, giving people quick visualizations, because, and I'm sure Adele's going to correct me on something of this, but the reticular activating system in the brain is one of the fastest ways you can shift your energy in terms of your brainwave activity. So if you've got something that you can visualize really quickly, it can wipe you basically from that negative mindset and help you get a reset. And that's why it's really useful to use something like visualizing the coconut, because it's quite neutral. And the reason I add in something that's a bit more fun, because it just actually really helps you move beyond just the picture, because sometimes people still can't quite get there with just the image. But it's important to be using that visualization, because that is about shifting the mindset and opening creativity.
Which is why we often lie like this. If you want to do healing work, you often, like in Reiki, for example, you often start here, because that is basically bringing energy. Like, you know, if you can, that's where the science and the healing and the yoga come together. Is you're helping to open up all those essential deep subconscious centers right in the subconscious, which is basically a chakra in there, where your hand can help to activate with extra energy and awareness.
So I think it's useful to think about like what that bigger heartfelt mission is, and do some of those Rod Stryker questions. And it doesn't matter if you don't really have a full answer, you know, like generally, like my answer of my life's purpose is always the same, and it's a really, really vague giant concept, and that works for me, and I'm like, I'm okay with that. And then how does that manifest into like shorter midterm intentions? Well, you know, it kind of does. Like, you work out that shorter midterm intention, whether it's a bit of a Satchitananda, a little bit of a law of attraction, and some visualization games. And then obviously it's how do we then bring that shorter midterm intention into our daily intention or monthly intention. Say if you want to do it with the new moon cycle, which was where today's kind of idea came from, because today's new moon and we've got a solstice and we've got an eclipse. Yay!
Yay! This is big stuff.
Full on. So it just means that like it's a good day for setting good new intentions. Obviously, a new moon is great for setting new intentions with the energy of what the moon is in terms of sign. So today it's in Cancer, so kind of, you know, really looking into kind of what Cancer means in terms of the energy that sign brings, and what goddesses kind of work with that kind of energy maybe as well. I feel like that would be a good one for you, Raj. And kind of,
love
you know,
a bit of goddess work.
Love a bit of goddess work. I knew you would do. So just kind of connecting into, because it brings you that sense that it will bring you that power and that support to really help whatever your intentions are for this cycle, so that then when you get to that full moon you can do a release and let that intention go. Because obviously the one thing we haven't touched on, I'm suddenly very aware of the timing and Jenny will turn up and we won't be ready to move, is that we set the intention, we visualize the intention, we put a lot of emotion into the intention, and like obviously that's all gratitude and loving energy and intention and emotion, and then we need to let it go. And so that point of the full moon and that point of letting it go, and it's not the full moon that is the time to always let it go. Obviously that goes within working within a moon cycle, but also that sense of everyday intention and then letting it go. And whether you choose to let it go by writing it down, burning a piece of paper, I don't know, just getting on with your day, whatever your process is, if you have a way to let it go. So, you know, the common tools for visualization are vision boards, journaling, art pads, which I would have thought would be a great one for you. Using your meditation practice, beginning and end of your yoga nidra, and also movement practice. So having that intention, even before you do a gym workout, it doesn't even have to be yoga, right? It's just moving and allowing that intention to move through you as you do it, and then getting on with your day. The only time that it serves you not to let go of the intention in that way, because those all work really well when you're using law of attraction, is if you've got a bad habit that you're trying to change. So if you've got a bad habit that you need to change, that you're trying to kick yourself out of, you want to use prompts that will remind you throughout your day of your intention. So you bring it back into your energy and you go, this is what I must come back to, so that, you know, I don't know. The example I was given when I was training was smoking, which I find quite a weird example to give you guys. But it's like every time you crave the cigarette is to come back to the intention.
You just replace it with chocolate.
Chocolate? No, I don't agree. Chocolate can't be something that is bad for you.
No, I agree too, wholeheartedly.
Sugar's definitely bad for me.
Sugar is not chocolate.
Not sugar in chocolate.
So when you have a sugar craving, let's be specific, you come back to that intention, you know, and that could be a short-term intention that you're trying to wean yourself out of that behavior, and that's when you want to use prompts for the intention and keep recalling an intention back. So you can use that intention in that way of letting it go and releasing it to the universe in order to manifest something, but you can also use your intention to change your behavior when you're stuck in cycles of things that aren't serving you. And this is that wonderful thing, right? Intention has just such a broad range of, like, you know, manifest your heartfelt desire, manifest your house, or stop eating loads of sugary sweets. Like, you know, and it's using it as a tool that's appropriate for the things that you're trying to change or create. But I think the most important thing with all of the intention work is coming back to that heartfelt mission and how you can master it in your small daily living, so that it is a purposeful life, that in all those small actions there's that sense of heartfelt purpose, regardless of whether it's trying to stop eating sugar or having that dream holiday.
And with the with the Sankalpa, the deep heartfelt mission, I guess, when it's naturally arising, that's actually because you have realized that's actually your inner self. And so those words that come up at that time, or that sensation, doesn't have to be a word, but it could be a feeling or sensation or a realization, that's actually you getting to the depths of what you really are underneath all the external personality and ego traits. And so that can be very powerful to realize, but it can also be why we resist it and why we have trouble repeating it, because we have all these layers of armor on us that prevent us from seeing clearly what we actually are at the heart, and which is why it's good to have the small steps leading up to the big thing, because we realize when we have a really deep meditation and we connect with that sankalpa very intuitively, we realize that we're already all those things that we want. We're already that. We don't have to do anything for it except to stop covering it up. So, but that's the hard part, the challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a teacher once who always used to talk about it as peeling back the layers of the onion, and that, you know, like you never get to the core of it in a way, like you're just always peeling, there's another layer and there's another layer, and it's just, you know, enjoying that process of the peeling.
It's like the dusty lampshade. That's another good analogy that I like. That the light, it's dusty, the light doesn't shine out of it, and that's basically what we're doing with all our negative thinking or our habits or our layering it on. We're layering the dust on, we're covering our light. And so we're just trying to get rid of that dust and that, you know, purifying ourselves effectively to uncover what's already in us.
And I think it's also not putting pressure on ourselves to think that we need to know. You know, I think that's why I like the approach of mastery and just thinking, I don't need to put myself under pressure that I'm here to deliver X and it's going to have this impact and that's how I'm going to leave the world, because that's still that stuff. That's still like this Western approach of legacy, as opposed to, you know, there's the event I went to actually this morning. It was an impromptu gathering. We're allowed gatherings, and a little impromptu get together that was created yesterday, and it was interesting. We did, like, hardly anyone spoke when we arrived, and then at the end of it, one of the things that came up was the sense of custodianship, and that we all need to be custodians of ourselves, not just of land, and allowing ourselves to recognize that it's okay just to be a master of living, like just to be happy with the fact that you live and that you're surviving in a contented way with a lovely man, you know, is like an awesome thing to get to, right? You know, being an awesome is like that is mastery, and that is masterful living, and that is purposeful living, and not to have to put yourself under pressure that there's more to it than that. And that, I think, is coming back to that really simple heart essence, as opposed to us looking at like that objective way that we like to in the West.
I think it's also that thoughts that came up when you were saying that was that it almost feels selfish to feel as though it's okay for you to just be fully in the life that you've got for yourself, or that you've made or you've created, and just get on within just enjoying it, because it feels as though there's something in me that comes up that it's not giving back anything, like you're just living your life and you're just happily enjoying your nice stuff, whatever that might be, but then you're not giving back. And I don't know whether that's again like a cultural thing, or this sense that there must always be like work to be done or something to be achieved, which, you know, are cultural things as well. But trying to find that as you're moving through life, that you're finding this kind of inner sense of groundedness in knowing what your life's purpose is, but then also just getting on with it and letting yourself enjoy it
But it's that sense, Raj, of remembering that you never know how much of an impact you have on people just by helping someone cross the road, or, you know, like putting some money in a little charity pot, you know, by, you know, or having that little chat with that person who looked lonely. Like, if you are being intentional and living from that heart space, and you're full of your own joy, and you're not worried about what you're going to do and deliver in the world, but you're just full of your own love and mastery of life, you're naturally going to give to people in a way that you're not even aware you're giving. And you may not even be aware of that impact that that has. And often we're not. You know, like, it always amazes me when stuff comes back and someone's like, oh, you did this. And I'm like, oh shit, I did something. Like, you know, I had, like, you know, God, I've massaged so many hundreds of people on retreats. And, you know, like, I remember kind of like, I went back to London having not been there, taught a workshop, and randomly these two women that I taught classes and massaged in Greece came up to me and they're like, Nid, we're so happy to see you. Because of what you'd said when I was having this massage, my life has changed, and oh, I've done all of these things. I'm so happy. And, you know, that moment where I'm like, I have no idea what I said, and I really don't want responsibility for that life change. But I would have had no idea if I'd not seen these two women again, right? And yet, you know, it's like, but apparently it's such a huge thing for two people, and all of these consequential changes that happen to them, that they've then had an effect on other people. And that was just me doing my thing, right? And not trying to give back or create something. So I think it's recognizing that we just don't realize the impact that we have by just being content and doing what is within our heart the right thing to do. And then you can be okay with changing those small steps. You can be okay with navigating and the flow of your life taking you through different life directions, because as long as you're happy and you're doing it from your heart space, it's always going to be delivering to people.
That's a really hard lesson, I find. I'm learning that one all the time. I'm so in the middle of that all the time. I'm always trying to do more, trying to think, you know, as soon as I get an instant of space in my mind, I just get these big ideas about, oh, I could do this and I could do that. And it's like, I love to, but it's too much. And I'm really having to, like, pick up after myself. All the time. I did it the other day. It's like, again, here we go again. At least I'm getting a bit quicker at recognizing when I'm doing these things, but I still get myself into a pickle really quickly by just having a big idea and thinking, oh yeah, I should do that, or I'd love to do that, but not really following through, being logical, or, you know, bringing it out into the real world. It's all in here and it's exciting, but
I find that it's it comes through as guilt. Like, I find often I feel guilty for, and to me that's definitely a Western Christian value, like, rubbish thing kind of being placed on me. And my mum was full of guilt from her mother, who was like a fundamentalist Baptist, and it was all guilt. And, you know, that definitely has come through in that upbringing, you know, of like, you know, you must be a good person and you must go and help these people, and I feel bad because I don't spend my Christmas wanting to do a soup run. Like, you know, it's like that level of like, but you've got to recognize that, you know, that maybe that's not your heartfelt mission, right? But if you're living from your heart, you're naturally going to be giving, and people will, as long as people are willing to receive. And I guess that's the only thing I haven't actually talked about, mindful of time. We got enough time. Jenny's not turned up. I've got a movement series as well, Raj, for us to go through. But the last thing is receiving. So one of the things that often I think doesn't get enough attention, and this is where also law of attraction does slightly differ from Sankalpa, because Sankalpa will naturally manifest itself, because if it's coming from within you, you will change. So I don't think it necessarily resonates in the same way as law of attraction does, in terms of, you know, receiving X outcome, but it will obviously still be the same with a Sankalpa. It's just that because it's from your heart, I don't find it, the manifestation is quite the same, but is the sense of receiving. So I began saying you know, we set our intention at the new moon, then potentially, you know, we say we release it at the full moon. And in order to kind of receive, it will be at the end of that second part of the cycle, when that full moon goes back to becoming a new moon before the next new moon, is that point at which your full cycle, kind of like the manifestation time, should be coming through at the end of that 28 days. Not necessarily, because it does depend what you've set as an intention, right? We don't all manifest in 28 days. Some people manifest in 28 days, some people don't too, and some of us take 28 years. So it's, you know, but that in theory would be the cycle. So one of the key aspects is that once you release your intention, you've got to be in a state to receive it. And you've got to be in a matching vibration of what it is that you're drawing to you. So you've got to let it go and maintain that vibration of gratitude and love in order for it to come and meet you. Otherwise, you're going to attract a vibration that's not so full of joy, or is the vibration you've set out, right? So you're going to attract that vibration. So you've got to let it go. And then in terms of receiving, stay in a good energetic vibration. So keep those uplifted emotions, but also keep your eyes open and your senses open to receiving. Because a lot of what people fall down on is that they ask for something, but then they don't allow it to come through, and it never comes through how you think. So always just being open to those weird and quirky moments of, you know, someone saying, oh, just go over here, or, you know, the traffic lights change and you go down a different road, and all of those weird scenarios that lead you into manifestation. It's that combination of staying in a good emotional, energetic state in order to attract it, but also being really open to all those random and wonderful events that happen in life that bring you into a circumstance where things manifest. And I don't know about you, Adele, but I don't find that the Sankalpa has that same way necessarily. It doesn't manifest quite like that, because I think it comes through you as opposed to external. I think the vibrational match happens, because I think, like with the not eating sugar, if you keep coming back to your intention regularly, you will change your internal vibration to come to not having sugar, if that makes sense. So you can use that intention to align yourself to that, in that heartfelt intention, which is different from the law of attraction intention of drawing things externally more. Am I making sense?
Yeah, and with the Sankalpa, it's more about becoming the being that you actually are. So it's about clearing the debris from our lives or personality that allows us to be who we really are.
That's a much better way of putting it. Thank you, Adele. Very clear. Spot on. That's it. Whereas law of attraction isn't about becoming who you are. It's just it's just about attracting vibrations.
Yeah.
But obviously that is also becoming who you are, right? If you're trying to attract the vibration of who you are, you will create that.
Yeah. So it's all the same thing, but it works at different levels, and consciously we're aware of it in different ways. It's less of it's Sankalpa is more of a subconscious changing or acceptance of who we actually are, coming to terms and believing who we actually are, believing in ourselves as who we actually are. The setting a positive or an intention is more about changing our behaviour in the world to all our vibration. It's another way to say it. Changing our behaviour so that we act in a way that brings what we want, rather than repelling it by our behaviour.
Yeah.
So having the right behaviour. And that's where we're programming our subconscious to be the behaviour we need to be, or to act in the way we need to act to bring to us what we need or want. So yeah, I guess two different ways that it manifests, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, that's perfectly explained. Thanks, Adele.
The other way I work with this sometimes is to actually, sorry, mindful of time, but to actually just be grateful for whatever it is that I want. I'd be grateful that is the way it is. So rather than a lack of whatever it is, just being grateful for that it is already. and believing that it is. So whatever it might be, it might be perfect health, for example. So I might be feeling a bit unwell, or, you know, stuff's going on. Instead of saying, please, can I be healthy, or I am healthy, I'm healthy, or whatever. It's like, thank you for being healthy, and thanking myself, or the universe, or whatever you believe in, for being healthy. And that just flicks the subconscious around to the mindset, I am healthy. So I find that can be it can actually be instantaneous if you practice it. You can change your mindset. Like literally, we can change our mindsets really fast, and that can change our physiology very fast. It can actually literally happen within minutes, seconds, minutes, hours, just through the power of mindset change. But I think that's a practice, that one.
Yeah. And I think sometimes a good place to start with that practice is to start with like an acceptance mantra of, you know, just like everything is perfect as it is. And you know, you can do that to start with, just to help you get to that acceptance, and then going for gratitude for what is. Definitely, yeah. And I found that really helped me a lot, especially in the early days when I was really ill. That made a big difference, to just be grateful for the fact that it could be, and the fact that, like, you know, it's like, it's a possibility. It's like, yeah, it's a possibility, it can come. It's like exciting enough.
Yes, I certainly didn't start out doing that practice. That practice came to me much more recently. I think it's something that needs to be worked up towards, potentially. Well, depending on, you know, how far you need to go.
Yeah, and also depending, I think, and also depending on what it is. Like, I definitely find that sometimes those kind of practices work really well with health, but I don't necessarily find it always helps me so much in other areas of my life. So sometimes I find different areas of my life, different practices are more supportive and shift me faster. Whatever resistance I've got in another area of life, that practice doesn't work in the same way, right? And just recognizing that that's just my own resistance in that subject area. So being flexible with what you use to help you with setting your intentions.
Yeah.
I hope that gave some
different ways,
more clarity and some more ideas to help you with some intention setting.
Yeah, I guess I keep flipping between the kind of the deeper stuff and the more sort of short-term awareness stuff. And it's interesting getting the perspective of that whole cleaning the debris to reveal who you really are, versus looking at sort of ways of changing your awareness and your habits and what you're actually doing in an active space. So it's interesting hearing about it from those two different ways in. I guess the only other thing on my question is, when you're aware that you're not in a really great space in terms of mental health, how can you use these sort of intention setting things to help lift you into a different space? Because it feels like a lot of this stuff works really well when you're not struggling to get out of bed in the morning. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you're just talking about that kind of, not to put it to such an extreme, but there are those moments where when you're lost in a cloud of just, and you can't sort of see yourself past this dark space, that then trying to shift through that to think about some of these intention things feels quite difficult.
Yeah, I agree totally, Raj.
Totally.
And my strategy is when I get to the point where I'm like I need to change something.
Yeah.
Even that is a big step. And then the first thing I go to personally is just ask. Like, you ask whoever, it's the universe, it's God, it's goddesses, it's whatever greater thing than you that you believe in. You ask that thing and just say, please help me with this, whatever, fill in the blank. And then you just watch and wait and start to notice, just be really open-minded and start to notice little changes that might, in your behavior, things that you're being guided to do. So it might be, so for me, for example, it happened to me recently. I'm like, please help me get out of this state. It's really horrible. I need some help. And I went, cut out the bread, get rid of all the gluten in my life again. It's like, no bread.
Yep.
and no sugar. And like straight away, I started wanting to eat more greens, and my, I cleaned up my diet, and then within a day or two, like, oh, I feel better now.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure it was just, it depends what you believe. I believe I was being guided. It was like, okay, now she's ready, she's open, she's ready to be guided. Now we can push in the right direction.
Yeah.
Whereas all by myself, I was just going down the gurgler with my mindset. I'd forgotten all the tools, forgotten about affirmations, forgotten all that stuff, letting go of practice left, right, and centre. And it wasn't until I just pulled myself up by the bootlaces and asked that I could start, it could turn around. I mean, so personally, for me, that
I would say for me, there's two things that I do, because it slightly depends on what the energy is that I'm struggling with. So when it's mental health side, and I mean, like, I've always been quite open that I've had, depression since I was 7 years old, and I've had years of panic attacks as well as a lawyer. So I mean, like, mental health has definitely been one of my joyful times in life. And that definitely, for me, I found that the Sankalpa, that gentle heartfelt stuff, or the I Rest with Richard Miller, in fact, the Richard Miller stuff's really good because it's body, sense, feeling. And so as someone who's very ungrounded, and if you think anxiety and depression are very ungrounded, that's why it's mental health, right? Because you're just you're expelling so much energy out of your head, and you're not in your body. And the I Rest practice with Richard Miller is all about body, sense, feeling, and coming back into the body. So it grounds you, but it's very gentle, and it also helps connect back into the heart space. And so I find that if I can put on one of those practices, and certain Satchinanda teachers that I've studied with who are also incredibly gentle, then that will often really help me, because it just brings me into a very gentle, compassionate space where I'm a bit more grounded. And that often can bring me away from criticizing myself for having got into that space. So the compassion is important, and also being at that sense a bit more grounded. If I don't have time, or I'm not feeling like I can cope with being that quiet, then it will be trying to go and do something in nature. So I'll just try and go and sit myself in nature and watch the light. Just watching the light and the way it moves on things, for me, is like, it's that visual reset that just helps to make that shift. So if I've got access to nature, I'll do that.
That's nice.
I'd say those two are probably for me. And again, it's grounding as well. It's that grounding aspect of looking at nature and connecting back into that sense of feeling my body with nature as part of nature, the water in my body, the air in my breath, and just being in it. But it's very much the visual side is really important to help that reset. So I guess mine are just a bit more. And then often what I find is when I do those two things, like with the Sankalpa or watching nature, whatever the thing is that's the real, like, now this is the small intentional shift that you need to make in your daily behavior, kind of you kick up the butt moment, then it will come through. But it often comes through from that really gentle place that's very nourishing, rather than a like ness, which isn't necessarily always the most supportive when you feel really tender.
Nice.
But you might find your own things too. But I would definitely say if it's an intention thing to come back to, I think that very gentle Sankalpa from some Satchinanda teachers, it does depend on the teacher, and definitely I Rest ones are really good because they're designed for trauma, so they're very sensitive.
Great.
That'll be those two. Right. Okay. So I'm going to quickly do a
Thank you.
stop. Did that answer your questions, by the way?
Yes.